So in this session, we are starting off with a new chapter, and the chapter is Rectification of Errors, and let's have a discussion with regards to this. So at first, let's try and understand what is meant by a error. Okay, what is meant by a error? So an error is said to be a mistake that is made by the accountant. So it refers to a mistake which is made by the accountant, and this mistake could be made uh, unintentionally by the accountant. So this mistake could occur because of multiple reasons. It could be because the systematic process is not followed properly. It could be a mistake with respect to the application of a principle, or it could be a genuine mistake which has been made as a result of the increase in the volume of transactions. Now, moving on, there could be a number of causes as to why these errors could be brought about. One is due to lack of accounting knowledge. The other is carelessness of the accountant. The next is because we do not have a proper system in place which does an analysis or which does a review of the quality, these mistakes could be happening. Then these days, the most of the accounting practices that we have in place, it is all carried out with the help of computers. So there could be a genuine flaw in the software that is being used, because of which we are having this issue. So these are the reasons as to why we could have these errors. Now, when we talk about the types of errors, we can broadly classify them into two. You have error based on nature, and then you have error based on the impact it has on the trial balance. So based on nature, we have five. The classifications are error of omission, error of commission, error of principle, error of duplication, and then compensating errors. Based on the effect on trial balance, we have two. You have one-sided and then you have two-sided. So now let's talk about each of these in detail. You have error of omission. Error of omission happens because when you skip out on a transaction. Then you have error of commission. Error of commission happens when you end up recording the amounts incorrect. So for example, you were supposed to record the amount as 1,000, but instead of 1,000, you have now recorded that as 10. Or you had a transaction of 5,000 which has taken place. Instead of 5,000, you have made a note of it as 50,000. So that is what is meant by error of commission. Then you have error of duplication. So error of duplication is you recorded the transaction took place once, but unfortunately you ended up recording it twice. So this is quite possible. This is quite there is room for this to happen. Probably you may be in a firm where you have multiple accountants, and then one accountant has already recorded that into the journal, by again another accountant came by, and then he have applied that, he has processed the transaction again. That could be another reason. Then you have error of principle. So we've already touched upon the accounting principles, and we saw in certain cases transactions have to be depending on the type of account that you have, we will have to go about with the application of the accounting rule, and depending on that, we will have to figure out what is the exact treatment. But you could make a mistake with respect to that. So for example, you paid interest. When you pay interest, you should debit your interest account, but instead of debiting, you have credited the interest account. So that's the error of principle. Then you have compensating errors. What is compensating errors? Compensating errors are you end up making more than one error, and then one error compensates the other error, and that is what is meant by compensating errors. Then moving on, we have uh, the classification based on the effect on trial balance. So you have one-sided error and then you have two-sided error. One-sided errors are those errors which affects only one side of the trial balance. Such kind of errors are called as one-sided errors. Then you have two-sided errors. Two-sided errors are those errors which impacts only one side, which impacts both the sides of the trial balance. However, here what happens is that it does not impact the total. It's just that your transactions are not correct. So usually two-sided errors happen in the case of compensating errors. So you made one mistake and then you made another mistake, and these two mistakes are cancelling out each other. That is called as two-sided errors. Then next important thumb rule that we have to remember is the rules with regards to rectification of errors. We have to remember the rules with regards to the rectification of errors. So you have so these are the thumb rules that you have to remember. If the error is under debited or over credited, you will have to debit the account. Okay, under debit, over credit, you will have to debit. If it's under credited or over debited, then you will have to credit. Okay, so I'll repeat that. Uh, Under debited, over credited, you will have to debit. Under credited, over debited, you will have to credit. So this is the very important thumb rule that you have to remember with respect to rectification of errors. Then you have the next topic that we have to remember is suspense account. What is meant by suspense account? Suspense account is usually an account which is open when the trial balances does not tally. So there could be a difference between the debit or the credit side, and then this is a temporary account that you're opening. And what you would be carrying out here is that you would be placing the difference. So the difference would be placed in the suspense account so that you could go about exploring and identifying the reason for the mismatch. So suspense account is an account which is used to rectify the errors. Usually suspense account is used for transferring the differences. So any differences that you have, that difference gets transferred into the suspense account. Uh, Another reason why we would end up using the suspense account is because it will help the accountant to identify the error. Then, depending on how the mistake is being made, you will go about rectifying the errors. Now, these are some steps that you have to remember with respect to rectification. The first step is that you have to identify the error. So you have to understand where exactly did you go wrong. Okay? Where exactly did you go wrong? Which account have you made mistake? Once you have identified where you have gone wrong, second step is that you have to identify what effect does the error have on your books of accounts, especially the trial balance. Okay, you have to understand what effect does it have when you go about with respect to that error. Is it a one-sided error or is it a two-sided error? Okay, is it a one-sided error or is it a two-sided error? Then once you have done this, then you have to understand what is the impact of the error. What 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 impact does the error bring about with the accounts that are involved? So here you have to apply the thumb rule. You have to remember: is it under debited, over credited, under credited, over debited? So depending on this, we will have to go about with the uh, with respect to the uh, with respect to the then you have the steps with regards to rectification of the errors. Then you will be passing the counter journal entries in order to rectify the errors. So these are the steps that you would be following with respect to the rectification of the errors. So this is how we will be going about with respect to these are the steps that we need to be following with respect to the rectification of the errors. So so these are the steps that we have to follow with respect to the rectification of the errors.